In the world of Hollywood, image is everything. Careers rise and fall not only on talent, but also on the stories that unfold behind the scenes. For years, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have been seen as one of the entertainment industry's most powerful couples or gold and duo whose carefully curated public image seemed untouchable. But recent developments have sparked a storm of speculation that threatens to change everything we thought we knew about them. And at the center of this firestorm is a surprising twist, whispers suggesting that Ryan Reynolds himself may have been the mastermind behind a series of moves that critics say were designed to protect their empire, even if it meant putting another star, Justin Baldoni, on shaky ground. The figure of $9 million has been circulating, tied to project's legal maneuvers and publicity campaigns, raising questions about just how far this celebrity power pull might go to maintain their dominance. Was this all business strategy? Was it a protective measure for Blake Lively's reputation as she faced increasing scrutiny, or was it something bigger, an orchestrated takedown? That reveals just how strategic Reynolds has become in Hollywood's cutthroat environment. What makes this story so compelling is not just the celebrity drama, but the broader implications it has for media creators and the balance of power in entertainment. The unfolding legal twists, PR battles, and behind-the-scenes tactics highlight a playbook that many in the industry rarely discuss openly. Today, we're pulling back the curtain. From the first legal filings to the escalating public clashes, we'll unpack how Ryan Reynolds may have quietly shaped a narrative that placed Justin Baldoni in the crossfire. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll see why this is being called one of Hollywood's boldest and riskiest moves in recent memory. For years, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively built a reputation that seemed almost bulletproof. They weren't just movie stars, they were a brand. Reynolds had become a household name not only through blockbuster films like Deadpool, but also through his savvy investments in businesses like Aviation Gen and Mint Mobile, turning him into more than an actor. He was a mogul. Lively, on the other hand, carried a reputation as one of Hollywood's most elegant and bankable actresses, balancing her acting career with fashion endorsements, brand partnerships, and the image of being America's beloved starlet. Together, they represented what many in Hollywood call the perfect package, or couple whose personal and professional lives blended seamlessly into a narrative that was marketable, charming, and profitable. But in Hollywood, perfection rarely comes without cracks. Behind the glamorous photo shoots and witty red carpet interviews, pressure was mounting. Blake Lively's involvement in the film It Ends With Us placed her in the direct spotlight of her highly emotional and sensitive project. The film, based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, carried weighty themes that required careful handling. With Justin Baldoni directing and starring alongside her, the project was touted as one of the year's most anticipated releases. However, as buzz around the movie grew, so did scrutiny from fans, critics, and online communities. This is where the story begins to shift. What seemed like a golden opportunity for Lively to solidify her career in dramatic storytelling quickly became a lightning rod for criticism. From casting concerns to questions about faithfulness to the source material, every move the production made was dissected online. And as conversations heated up, the question rose: how would Lively, Reynolds, and their team handle this storm of publicity? According to insiders and those watching closely, it was around this time that Ryan Reynolds' influence became more apparent. Known for his sharp sense of humor and brilliant marketing instincts, Reynolds had long been seen as a master of shaping public narratives. Whether it was turning Deadpool into a global phenomenon with clever viral campaigns, or making Aviation Gen a cultural talking point through tongue-in-cheek ads, Reynolds had mastered the art of controlling the story. Some began to wonder, was he applying these same skills not just to products, but to people's perceptions of his wife's career? Hollywood is no stranger to strategic image management. Publicists, lawyers, and PR teams often work behind the scenes to protect their clients from damaging press. But in this case, critics argue that the move seemed unusually aggressive. Around the same time tensions round It Ends With Us were rising, narratives began surfacing that painted Baldoni in a less favorable light. Social media discussions questioned his choices as director, his ability to handle the subject matter, and even his approach to marketing the film. Whether these narratives were organic or carefully encouraged by outside influences remains one of the story's biggest mysteries. The figure of $9 million adds even more intrigue to the tale. Reports suggest that this sum was tied not only to production costs and promotional pushes, but also to strategies that extended beyond the screen. Where that money went, how it was allocated, and who benefited from it has become a subject of heated debate. Was it purely budgetary, or was it also used to influence narratives, legal strategies, and the broader battle for public opinion? This is where speculation around Reynolds intensifies. As someone with a keen understanding of how media cycles work, Reynolds would know the timing is everything. A well-placed headline, a trending topic, or even a subtle shift in how online communities frame a story can drastically change how audiences perceive it. If critics are right, he may have been pulling strings behind the curtain, not out of malice, but out of calculation, aiming to protect his wife's standing and, by extension, their shared empire. The relationship between stars and the media has always been symbiotic. Celebrities rely on coverage to stay relevant, while media outlets rely on stars to generate attention. But when that relationship tilts too far toward manipulation, it raises ethical questions. If Reynolds truly orchestrated a behind-the-scenes campaign, it would represent not just a personal strategy, but a reflection of how Hollywood power players can influence narratives that are beyond the screen. For Justin Baldoni, the impact was immediate. A respected actor and filmmaker, Baldoni had built his career in meaningful projects that often carried deeper social messages. His work on Jane the Virgin and his direction of 5 Feet Apart positioned him as a creative voice, willing to tackle emotional stories with care. But as The Storm Around It Ends With Us intensified, Baldoni suddenly found himself in a different spotlight, one where doubts about his leadership and artistic vision were magnified. Supporters of Baldoni argue that he was unfairly targeted, becoming a casualty in a larger battle he never intended to fight. They suggest that instead of focusing on the film's story and performances, much of the conversation was hijacked by behind-the-scenes drama and speculation overshadowing the very message. The film was meant to convey this shift in narrative, not only complicated the movie's reception, but also threatened to dent Baldoni's reputation in Hollywood, a place where perception can be just as important as performance. As part 1 of this story unfolds, the stage set, we have a high-profile couple with immense influence, a rising filmmaker caught in the crossfire, and a swirling figure of $9 million that seems to hover over every decision. Was this all coincidence, or was it the beginning of a calculated series of moves designed to protect one image while quietly undermining another? In the next part of this deep dive, we'll break down the specific steps and strategies that fueled this narrative shift, tracing the timeline of events, analyzing key legal maneuvers, and exploring the PR campaigns that turned what could have been a straightforward movie release into one of Hollywood's most complex behind-the-scenes dramas. As the buzz around It Ends With Us grew louder, what had started as a highly anticipated adaptation slowly turned into a lightning rod for debate. Fans of the book had high expectations, but with those expectations came intense scrutiny. Casting choices, script rumors, and behind-the-scenes leaks created a storm on social media that seemed impossible to contain. In most cases, such criticism is par for the course in Hollywood, but this time the stakes felt higher. For Blake Lively, this was more than just another role. It was a defining opportunity to break free from typecasting and prove herself as a serious dramatic actress. Under Ryan Reynolds, observers note that Reynolds had always been more than just a husband in Blake's career. He had become her partner in brand building, someone who understood the mechanics of how to sell not only a movie, but also an image. While Blake brought elegance and charm, Reynolds brought wit and marketing genius. And as the criticism mounted, his fingerprints became more visible. The strategy appeared subtle at first. Influencers and entertainment outlets began shifting their tone, placing more emphasis on the challenges of directing the film rather than solely on Blake's performance. Discussions about production delays, creative disputes, and budget allocation started popping up, often pointing toward Justin Baldoni. For some, it looked like an organic shift in focus. For others, it raised questions. Was this a calculated move to redirect blame away from Blake Hollywood? Odd insiders understand the playbook. When a project faces turbulence, it's often easier to redirect criticism toward the director than the star. Directors, after all, hold the official responsibility for how a film comes together. By framing Baldoni as inexperienced or ill-prepared, the narrative shielded Lively from being the central target of fan disappointment. And this is where Reynolds' supposed involvement takes center stage. With his history of crafting viral campaigns, he knew how to subtly influence public perception without leaving obvious fingerprints. The $9 million figure continued to linger in whispers. Some industry reports hinted that part of this sum was used not only in marketing, but also in legal groundwork and reputation management. While concrete evidence remains elusive, speculation suggests that this money fueled a multi-pronged campaign covering everything from lawyer consultations to quiet partnerships with media outlets. In Hollywood, such sums can easily disappear into the background of production costs. But in this case, it became a lightning rod of speculation. Justin Baldoni, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure. As director, he was tasked not only with delivering a faithful adaptation, but also with navigating the storm of expectations from fans and studios alike. Every creative choice, down to the color palette or the pacing of scenes, became subject to online debate. And while most directors develop strategies to handle criticism, the unusual intensity of this narrative shift made Baldoni's job infinitely harder. Critics sympathetic to Baldoni argue that he was placed in an impossible position. If he spoke up to defend himself, he risked appearing defensive or unprofessional. If he stayed quiet, the silence allowed negative narratives to snowball unchecked. For someone who had built a reputation on thoughtful, socially conscious filmmaking, this sudden repositioning in the pub, I felt like sabotage. But why target Baldoni at all? Here's where the theories grow bolder. Some believe Reynolds' strategy wasn't necessarily personal, it was protective. By pushing Baldoni into the narrative spotlight, Reynolds ensured that Blake would remain insulated from direct backlash. After all, if audiences pin the movie's struggles on its director, they were less likely to question Lively's ability as a lead actress. This redirection, intentional or not, kept her reputation largely intact at a time when her career needed stability. The media landscape played a massive role in this. Traditional outlets picked up stories highlighting production challenges and creative clashes, while online platforms magnified fan frustrations. The narrative was no longer about whether Blake could carry a dramatic role, but whether Justin Baldoni was capable of handling such a high-profile project. This shift not only changed how the film was perceived before release, but also set the tone for how it would be remembered. Adding another layer to the controversy, lawyers entered the picture. Documents and court filings began to surface, linked not just to the film, but to wider issues around publicity rights and narrative control. Legal teams are often the invisible hands behind Hollywood disputes, and in this case, they appeared to be working overtime. Some filings hinted at strategic attempts to limit certain public disclosures, while others raised questions about intellectual property management. It wasn't clear whether these legal steps were routine or part of a larger effort to tighten control over the narrative. For audiences, the story became increasingly complex. What should have been a simple discussion about a film adaptation now carried undertones of power plays, legal maneuvering, and corporate-level strategy. And at the center of it all, Reynolds' name kept resurfacing, not through official confirmation, but through whispers, theories, and analysis from those familiar with Hollywood's inner workings. The perception of Reynolds as a mastermind isn't hard to believe when considering his track record. He had successfully navigated media storms, before turning potentially damaging moments into opportunity. Ties, his acquisition and later sale of Mint Mobile, for example, was a masterclass in PR strategy, transforming a business move into a cultural conversation. With that same mindset, it's not far-fetched to imagine him applying similar techniques to protect his wife's career. Yet there's another angle to consider. Some argue that this wasn't about protecting Blake alone, it was about protecting the Reynolds' lively brand as a whole. Together, they had built a multi-million-dollar empire with endorsements, joint projects, and an image that relied heavily on being Hollywood's most relatable power couple. Any significant blow to Blake's reputation would by extension affect Reynolds' brand value as well. In that sense, orchestrating a shift in narrative wasn't just personal, it was business. This raises critical ethical questions. Where is the line between smart PR and manipulation? Is it acceptable for celebrity to redirect public discourse if it protects their livelihood? Or does it cross into dangerous territory when another individual's reputation is sacrificed in the process? For Justin Baldoni, the outcome was undeniably complicated. While he continued to speak passionately about the project and its importance, the undercurrent of skepticism followed him. Critics who once celebrated his empathetic approach to storytelling now questioned his leadership, not necessarily because of his actual decisions, but because of the narrative storm surrounding him. As part to closes, we see how the pieces of this Hollywood chess game began to move. Reynolds, whether directly involved or not, was increasingly perceived as the strategist behind the scenes. Lively remained protected from the harshest criticisms, while Baldoni bore the weight of growing skepticism. The $9 million question loomed larger than ever, tying together money, strategy, and reputation in ways that blurred the lines between truth and perception. In the next section, we'll dig deeper into the timeline of events, examining how specific PR campaigns, legal filings, and media headlines aligned almost neatly to be coincidence. We'll also explore how fan communities and independent creators became unexpected players in this Hollywood showdown, amplifying narratives that may have been quietly seeded by powerful hands behind the curtain. As we close this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most intriguing behind-the-scenes dramas, a bigger picture emerges, one that stretches far beyond a single film, a single director, or even a single couple. What began as anticipation for a heartfelt book adaptation turned into a case study in power, influence, and strategy within the entertainment industry. And at the heart of it all lies the question that has fueled so much speculation: was Ryan Reynolds truly the mastermind behind Blake Lively's protection and Justin Baldoni's downfall? The figure of $9 million will continue to spark debate. Was it a straightforward budget figure tied to production costs and marketing, or did it represent something far more strategic, funds directed toward legal moves, narrative control, and carefully orchestrated PR efforts in Hollywood, where money and influence often go hand in hand? The possibility of a deeper strategy cannot be dismissed outright. What makes this story so compelling is not just the involvement of major stars, but the way it reveals the delicate balance between public image and personal ambition. Reynolds, long celebrated for his sharp wit and marketing genius, may have applied those same skills in ways that blurred the line between brand building and manipulation. If true, his behind-the-scenes efforts demonstrate just how much power Hollywood's elite can wield, not only in shaping movies, but in shaping the conversations around them. For Blake Lively, the result was a shield, as criticism of it ends with U.S. grew louder. Much of the direct backlash was deflected, protecting her status at a pivotal moment in her career. For Reynolds, it reinforced his role not just as an actor, but as a strategist, someone capable of turning tides that might overwhelm others. But for Justin Baldoni, the cost was clear. Whether by coincidence or design, he became the focus of skepticism, carrying the weight of a narrative storm that may not have been entirely of his own making. In the eyes of some, he was unfairly repositioned as the weak link in a project that should have been remembered for its emotional resonance rather than its behind-the-scenes controversies. This story also underscores a broader truth in the digital age. Narratives are more fragile than ever, with fan communities, influencers, and independent creators amplifying every detail. The difference between success and scandal can hinge on timing, perception, and who controls the story. And in this case, many believe Ryan Reynolds may have mastered that control better than anyone else. In the end, whether Reynolds truly orchestrated this takedown or whether the pieces simply fell into place by coincidence, the result is the same. A Hollywood power couple emerges with their brand intact, while another filmmaker faces an uphill climb to reclaim the narrative. It's a reminder that in an industry built on stories, the most important tale is often the one unfolding behind the cameras. As audiences, we may never know the full truth. But one thing is certain, this $9 million bombshell has pulled back the curtain on how strategy, money, and influence shape not only Hollywood careers, but the very way we experience its stories. And that revelation may be the most powerful plot twist of all.